Okay, so with continuing what we've been doing in terms of explaining everything when it comes to breaking down the Glock, everything that you need to know about a Glock, right? We're gonna go ahead and continue from here. So now we're about to get into the internals of the slide, the internals of the slide. So what exactly should one expect when they're kind of diving into this, okay? So the reason why I'm going so hard on explaining this information is because I find it silly for individuals to operate a handgun and not know what they're doing with the handgun or know why certain parts are there for the handgun. Because let's say, for instance, if something were to happen and you're in a pinch, you're not able to get a hold of someone who normally works on your handgun, I think it's important for you to know what to do with your handgun in itself, because maybe you yourself have the capabilities of making alterations or changes or fixes. If you simply just knew everything that you needed to know about your handgun. So one of the things that we're about to go ahead and do is we're about to go ahead and dive into what is then the internals of the slide. However, before we actually dive into that, we actually have to talk about what is then known as the backplate right here. So I know that says SW. By the way, if I haven't already said this already, this is a custom slide from Slide Works Engineering. Slide Works Engineering, okay? And the back plate as well, as you can see right here, Slide Works Engineering. This is not an OEM slide. However, it is something that's machined out of the same material that of what the OEM slide is machined out of. So just keep it nice and simple. So what we're about to do is go ahead and talk about this back plate really quickly. It is a rectangular back cover that is inserted into the back of the slide. Right, so a rectangular, right, back cover that's inserted into the back of the slide. The OEM factory backplate is molded from polymer while being reinforced with stainless steel inserted along both sides of it. So let's go ahead and show what this looks like. So what I'm about to do right here is, this is a little bit of education as well as explaining the parts. Okay, so in order for you to take out the backplate, you just can't simply just move this or slide this out. And sometimes I can't even do it with a gloved hand. So if you see me take my gloves off, you'll know why. So what you want to do is you want to take a punch or something that's kind of small, move up this striker, right? You're going to hear a click. You're going to hear an audible click, okay? And then what you then want to do is you want to take your non-dominant hand or whichever hand that you feel comfortable using. So what you want to do is get this punch right here, take it and actually put it. I'm gonna show you exactly where I'm putting it, because I don't like videos that be explaining things but don't tell you where they putting it. So I'm gonna take this punch and put it right here, and I'm gonna apply downward pressure, and you're actually going to see the striker move downward, almost as if like you put your finger on like somebody's neck area and you're pulling downward. The head gonna move down with it, okay? So the punch is actually sitting, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but you see that black part right there? That's called the channel. That's like a channel liner, or like a channel, like a striker, like channel plunger thing. We'll explain it in a second, but you're going to be pressing down on that. Okay, so as you pressing down on that, that frees up your ability to slide with your thumb out the back plate. While you're simultaneously sliding out the back plate, which you just saw it fall, you want to continuously, like you see my thumb right here, keep your thumb right here. Why? This prevents the springs from extracting or popping up the extractor, depressor, plunger, and the striker, okay? We're going to get into all that in a second. So we got the back plate right here, the back plate. And kind of what I was trying to explain, you don't see it that well on here, but it's reinforced with some steel along the sides, at least what the OEM backplate looks like. Now with this one doesn't look like it's been reinforced with any kind of steel on the side. It looks like it's all made of polymer, but at the end of the day, when you get your OEM factory Glock stock gun, it's going to be polymer with a little bit of steel along the side of the back plate. But like I've already kind of explained, main purpose of this back plate right here is to retain the right, which we gonna get into in a second, retain this striker, aka firing pin, and it helps to retain this, as I pull it up, this extractor, depressor, plunger. Extractor, depressor, plunger. Okay, we're gonna get into all that in a second. So we want to make sure we cover all our bases. It also helps to protect the striker from dust, debris, and getting damaged, okay? You do not want this device right here getting damaged, okay? You do not want this device getting damaged. I repeat, you do not want this device getting damaged, okay? And so this actually kind of came up with it. It's okay, we'll pull it down. And then we're gonna go ahead and pull it out too. All right, because we're about to get into all that in a second. All right, so that's the back plate. Let's go ahead and get into the fun stuff, okay? These are the internals. This is the part of the video where people probably not gonna be as interested about. I'm gonna be honest with you, but it's cool. I think it's important because these things right here is responsible for helping your gun shoot. If you don't understand this stuff and you end up getting a malfunction, you may want to click on this video because you might want to get to knowing this stuff, okay? So let's go ahead and start with this combination right here. So this is the striker spring, the firing cup retainers, retainer cups, and the firing pin spacer sleeve, okay? So we're just gonna go ahead and explain all this in a second, okay? So the striker is an L shape, and when I say L shape, look at this, right? I'm saying L shape because it kind of, you know, pokes out like this. It's not really L shape, but we can call it that. It's an L shaped stainless steel internal structure that is housed within the slide and reciprocates backwards whenever the trigger is pulled. This mechanism of pulling the trigger causes the cruciform, okay, the cruciform, right? The cruciform is referring to this part of the trigger bar, right? We're gonna get into that in a second, right? So this mechanism is pulling the trigger, causing the cruciform of the trigger bar to engage with, hold on, the striker lug. This is the striker lug, okay? So what are the features of this particular device? Number one, because I do want to put this back, I don't want to leave this out. Okay, so number one, we're gonna start here out of order. You got the striker spacer sleeve, the striker spacer sleeve. This is also called the firing pin spacer sleeve. This one goes down here in that area. That's where it sits. It sits in this whole area right there. You can actually kind of see through it, okay? Next, you have the striker, right? Also called the firing pin. I'm saying this because you're going to hear these terms. You're going to say the firing pin, and you're also going to hear striker. This entire thing is the striker, aka the firing pin, okay? So this is what this is. You got the striker spring in itself, okay? As you can see, there's a spring right here. I'm actually going to take this apart. And then you have the striker spring cups, okay? So watch me how I do this, okay? So I'm telling you, this is gonna be a very in-depth video. So you take, this is the best way I've learned how to do this, okay? So you take the striker spring and you actually insert it backwards. You insert it backwards in the hole, but you don't insert it all the way. So what you wanna do is where the striker lug is, rotate it, and it actually is going to sit under this kind of groove area within the back of the slide. What that does is it allows for you to better take down this spring. Now, this is going to be one of the most important things when it comes to taking down this handgun. I repeat, this is going to be one of the most important things when it comes to taking down this handgun. These cups right here, right, as you can see, these like little black cups right there, you do not want to lose these. These will go flying if you do this incorrectly. So watch how I do this, okay? So what I'll do is I'm going to take my hand, or my non-dominant hand, I'm going to pull down on the spring, and I'm going to take the other hand and release the cups. What that does is the moment you do that, that frees up the spring to fully expand out fully to its full capacity. Because the whole purpose, right, and which we go get into in a second, we'll get into the purpose of what these little black cups is for. So this is me just kind of taking down the spring, okay? The firing spring, the firing pin. So it looks like this, and you can actually see more of the L shape right here, right? But since it kind of sits into this like sleeve thing, right? This is what it looks like. It looks like this, okay? All right, so that pretty much breaks down what is then known as the striker or the firing pin, okay? But let's go ahead and get into the function of this, and then we'll put it back together, because it's actually pretty quick to put it back together, and which is why I feel comfortable taking it apart. Okay, the striker is responsible for striking the primer of the ammunition. The action of the bullet being fired is triggered by the striker, aka the firing pin, striking the primer. So, as you kind of heard me already in this video, if you care about listening to the entirety of the video. So if this is a bullet, as a matter of fact, let me actually show you a real bullet. Let's show you a real bullet, okay? So let's take, all right. So this is some defensive rounds. Okay, this is some Federal HST 124 grain. But to keep it nice and simple, this is what a ammunition or round looks like, okay? This is 124 grain, and on the back of it, what you'll actually see is, if it zooms in on it a little bit too close, you'll see that there's kind of like this yellowish center in the back of the round. That is kind of referred to as the primer area. What happens is this particular, right, I don't want to, just in case, I don't want nothing to fire off. This particular tip of the firing pin taps the back of the primer, taps the primer, which initiates the action of the bullet being fired through the what? Through the chamber, or sorry, through the barrel of the handgun. When it's being chambered into the barrel, right? It's being fired, okay? So hopefully all that stuff makes sense. Let's move that out the way. Let's bring back the fake one, and we're gonna move the real one out the side. Okay, so that's the striker in itself, okay? And we'll go more into detail in terms of how it's actually happening. And you can actually see videos online in terms of how it's happening too. So that is the primer, right? The primer is the device within the bottom of the ammunition that's responsible for initiating the propellant combustion. The propellant combustion, thus causing the bullet to propel forward through the barrel of the handgun. Okay, that's basically a more articulate scientific way of explaining the firing pin hits the back of the round, and the bullet, right, which is the tip of the actual round, gets fired through while the casing gets extracted out the side of the slide. Okay, so what else? The striker, aka the firing pin, is part of the 3 safety system. So this is going to be your first of 3 times that you're going to hear me talk about this. The 3 safety system. I'm not going to go too deep into it now. We'll kind of cover it when we get to it, okay? So the 3 safety system of the Glocks is basic. The Glocks have that function to prevent the handgun from firing unless initiated by pulling the trigger. So the 3 safety systems, without going into detail, is trigger safety, firing pin safety, and drop safety. So if anyone ever asks, how come there's no safety switch on the Glock like it is on a 1911 or some other type of handgun that has a switch that goes from safety mode on, safety mode off? It's because when it comes to Glocks have a 3 safety system, and the 3 safety systems are all internal. There is no switch, but that just goes to show just how safe and reliable a Glock is. All right, so let's go into some other functions. The striker spring, right? The spring in itself that you see right here, right? The spring is responsible for pushing the striker forward to hit the primer in the ammunition after being reciprocated backwards when cruciform from the trigger bar engages with the striker lug. So basically what that looks like is this, okay? So we're going to go ahead and actually put this back together so I can actually give you a really good demonstration of what this actually looks like in terms of proper handgun technique. So as you see right here, let's show you this really quickly. I want to make sure this is all on camera, right? So striker goes into this kind of like little sleeve, little thing. I put it, insert it backwards, turn it, rotate it. So it sits right here, it's parked right here, it's not falling, not going anywhere. I take the spring, I insert the spring over, or I guess, or through the strikers through the spring. And this is the hardest part. This is the hardest part. This is gonna take some practice, okay? So I'm pulling down the spring. I'm pulling down the spring. The harder the spring, meaning the more pounds or pounds behind the spring is, the harder you doing this technique is going to be. So I'm pulling down the spring, and then what you want to do is you want to insert these black cups in and make sure that the black cups are engaged with each other. Once you have engagement of the black springs, you can slowly start to release the spring. And what's going to happen is the black cups that you just made sure they are in alignment with each other will catch the spring to prevent it from flying off or from coming off of the striker. And now you are prepared to insert the striker back into the handgun, okay? All right, so what happens is this striker lug that protrudes, that is protruding out from inside of the slide, the cruciform inside of the trigger bar is connected to the trigger bar. When you pull the trigger, pulling the trigger backwards moves the cruciform against this striker lug. So as it's moving backwards like this, it's moving backwards with the anticipation of the spring inside of the striker to move the striker back forward. And it's moving it back forward with the anticipation of striking the what? The primer on the back of the round, right? And so that's basically a long about way of just explaining what is the purpose and main purpose of the strikers. The striker is very, very, very important, which is why I went so hard to go into detail to really explain about the striker and handgun. I'm gonna be honest with you. I may even separate this video so the video's not too long. And then what I'll do is I'll make like either a playlist, and I'll kind of combine the videos all together to make one full video, but I'll still also keep it separate, okay? So that is the striker. Let's go ahead and move to the extractor, okay? So we're not going to talk about the extractor, Depressor, plunger yet, but we're going to go ahead and move to the extractor. So what is that, okay? So the extractor is actually located right here. Hold on one second. Located right here. This is the extractor of the handgun, right? So the extractor is a stainless steel hook-like structure with a black oxide coating that's located alongside and within the slide of the handgun, and is held in place by the extractor, depressor, plunger. So it's actually technically held in place by the extractor, depressor, plunger, and the safety plunger. Let me go ahead and insert that. So in order for you to be able to pull out this structure, right, you must kind of decompress. You must decompress what is the safety plunger. You can actually do this with your thumb, right? And the moment you press that in with your thumb, you can actually safely take your finger and actually remove the extractor from the handgun. I'm actually going to remove the safety plunger as well. All right, so perfect. So we see that right there. So as I kind of explained, as you see right here, it's kind of like this hook-like structure, right? Kind of has a little hook on it, kind of like a odd shaped looking device. But what exactly is the purpose of the extractor? Okay, it seemed like it doesn't really have much of a purpose, but kid you not, it actually does. So the purpose of the extractor, it aids in the process of chambering and loading a round into the barrel of the handgun by pushing the round up the ramp of the barrel whenever the slide reciprocates forward. So what's unique about this is, like, when I heard this for the first time, I'm like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't help with that. Kid you not, I slowed it down. I even watched videos on it. It totally does. So when you look at bullets, all bullets kind of have like this little ridge area, especially like 9mm bullets. And what's happening is when you're preparing to chamber a round into the barrel of the handgun, what the extractor does is when the slide reciprocates backwards to get ready to catch the round, to get ready to prepare to chamber it into the barrel of the handgun, the extractor actually, or the corner of the extractor, let me make sure it's in the camera, the corner of the extractor actually latches on or catches on to the ammo, the ammunition, and pushes it forward. So it's actually responsible for aiding in the process of pushing the ammunition forward, and loading once again, the ammunition, chambering the ammunition up the ramp of the barrel into the barrel of the handgun. Okay, so perfect. So the other purpose, the extractor also aids in the process of removing the fired ammunition, aka the casing, the spent cartridge, out the handgun once the barrel is unlocked by tilting downward as the slide reciprocate backwards. So that's basically a fancy way of saying, so rather you're shooting the handgun or you're racking the slide backwards on the handgun, once again, the extractor, aka is really in the name extractor. The extractor helps with inserting the ammunition, but since I said it's a hook-like structure, it also hooks on to this kind of like edge or this ridge area within the spent casing or the spent cartridge. And what it does is it actually helps pull it backwards or pull it out of the chamber, and it's helping, or it aids in part of the extraction or the injection of the round out the side of the slide. Okay, so that's pretty much unique about this. In addition, whether the round is loaded into the barrel of the handgun has been fired or not, the extractor still functions to remove the round when the slide reciprocates backwards after the handgun is fired, or from racking the slide backwards with your hands. So basically, just like I explained, that's the whole purpose of the extractor. Okay, now let's go ahead, not wasting any time, let's go ahead and move on to the I'm actually going to skip this part. I'm going to move on to the plunger, and then we'll go and talk about the extractor depressor plunger, because it's not really much to talk about when it comes to the extractor depressor plunger, but I do want to get ready to put this back into the slide. Okay, so I want to put this in first because this right here is a little booger. So this right here is the safety plunger, aka the striker safety plunger or firing pin safety, along with the spring. Okay, so what this is, it's a silver colored steel structure with a beveled center. Okay, the beveled center is right here. Let me give you a better angle. The beveled center is right there. As you can kind of see, it's beveled right there with a beveled center, and spring inserted that's located within the slide of the handgun, held in place by the extractor that I just got done showing, held in place by the extractor, and the extractor depressor plunger. Okay, so it's a couple of structures that's used to kind of help hold each other in place. But what in the world is this small structure responsible for? Because clearly it's in the handgun. Clearly it's important because they added it to the handgun, so it must do something unique, right? Well, the safety plunger, aka the striker safety or firing pin safety, is part of, as I've already explained before, the 3 safety systems that the Glock has: trigger safety, firing pin safety, and drop safety. What? Wait a minute. Firing pin safety. This is the firing pin safety plunger, right? So this is a crucial part of the internal safety structure. This is actually considered the second safety feature of the 3 safety system that the Glock has. The whole purpose of the safety plunger, it is designed to prevent the handgun from firing by preventing the striker, aka the firing pin, from moving forward until the trigger is pulled. What do we mean by that? Okay, So here's where there's a little bit of uniqueness, and I'm gonna explain this a multitude of ways. So as you see right here in this one, I'm gonna give you a sneak preview of this section right here, and then we can continue forward, making sure everything is in alignment. This right here, that's like this kind of like hook looking thing, right? That's part of the trigger bar. What happens is this actually sits, oh, I'm getting in the camera. This part right here, right? This part right here actually sits in front of this beveled safety plunger. The beveled safety plunger is preventing this from moving backwards unless the trigger is pulled to allow for this area to ride under or pushing the safety plunger up. By pushing the safety plunger up, this helps free up space for the striker to come forward. The striker cannot come forward unless the safety plunger, which is right here, unless this safety plunger is pushed upwards. Or you can also say the striker cannot drop to hit the primer unless this plunger is pushed upwards. And what causes this plunger to be pushed upwards is the reciprocation of, or the pulling of the trigger, which pulls the trigger part backwards, which allows for this thing to push this, right? Y'all understand what I'm saying, right? If you like what I'm saying so far, leave something in the comment section right now. Leave something in the comment section, okay? So that pretty much sums up that piece right there. And so what we're gonna do is let's go ahead and start slowly putting some of these pieces together, because I mean honestly it's really important to make sure you keep a tight connection with your stuff. Okay, so we're gonna put that back in there. I like to make sure all that's intact. Make sure all that's intact, nice and simple. And then lastly, we're gonna talk about the Extractor Depressor Plunger. Disassemble. This is a silver colored spring-loaded metal rod that's installed and housed within the back of the slide next to the striker. So if the striker is sitting right here in terms of the internal systems of the handgun, right? This right here is actually sitting right next to the striker, okay? So this right here is responsible for keeping the extractor rotated towards the breech face handgun by pressing against it. So the breech face handgun, the breech face pretty much just refers to this section right here. So where you see my punch, that's the breech face of the slide part of the handgun, right? Make sure we're in focus. That's the breech. So that's essentially what the whole purpose of this thing is, to make sure that the extractor is turned towards, the breech face, right? So make sure y'all show it. The extractor, right? So boom, it's turned towards the breech face, and make sure this is where it needs to be. But other than that, this really doesn't hold or do really much of anything outside of that. It's important. Oh, I inserted in backwards. So this is why it's important to make sure you pay attention. The spring part is what needs to be up. So it's important. It's needed. But other than that, it really doesn't do much. So that pretty much sums up this part of the video in terms of talking about the slide internals. The next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to talk about the frame, aka the lower part of the handgun, and we're pretty much going to go from there. But to cap this video off, if you want to insert this back part back in, just how I kind of explained by you take a punch and you pull down, this is a little bit different. So you align your back cover with the back of your slide, right? And you put your thumb right here. And what you want to do is you can actually take a bigger punch and you want to press down on the safety plunger, boom, and it kind of inserts in a little bit more. You see that? And you take something small to push down the Extractor Depressor Plunger, and then therefore, boom, you're going to hear like an audible click, and the back cover is now officially on the back of your slide, and everything is now maintained. And just to prove that everything is still in working order, before we get to talking about the frame, we're gonna just go ahead and demonstrate this really quickly, right? And then we'll come back for part 3 by talking about the frame of the handgun, right? Which shouldn't be too bad. Shouldn't be too bad, right? So as you can see, just like that, everything's in working condition. And then just like that, back to a now frame. And as we already broke down and discussed, we already discussed the slide. And so lastly, we'll break down this frame as well as the magazine, and that will conclude our video. So without further ado, I look forward to talking to you guys on the next video. So peace out.
That if I said so, take on Disassemble. He gon' duck, ain't no Super Nintendo. Ran out of shots, now my clip go extendo. He's doing hands, so when check on his mental. Can't tell who it is, gotta look up his dental. A whole lot of shooters, the strap is essential. That boy got erased like the end of a pencil.